She'll like rethink the ones with the red part. Pretty thick. I was like, oh, you need to cross it out right there. Couple minutes.
Well, not really, but you know, right there.
Okay, good. You say 5 minutes, people take it as like 15.
Yeah.
I don't understand why they take cigarettes today while we're still everybody. I guess it's just stress, but I don't understand cigarettes and cigarettes. I don't understand.
I would get that when they were. I don't have to feel can't smoke it.
I feel like it's heavy. Well, that came when they hired you, after I hired you, that was. Yeah. Or I mean, I guess I don't know.
I don't know.
I was at St. Vincent this week today, and I saw a nurse, like, in the parking deck, sitting in a wheelchair. I was like, I don't think it's so pretty. It's one of the reasons for all these crazy. It's just so much. You smell so bad. Yeah, it does. It shouldn't know that. I don't know either. It's just like wearing perfume, you know?
It kills me respiratory students on their smoke.
Yeah.
And the teachers, I'm like,
Really?
and the teacher? Yeah,
Definitely.
I mean,
This girl had a friend, her mom was pulling on it. And then like, you probably died this one.
yeah.
Some people just don't care. That's just one thing to say, like, all kinds of it down. But you would think if you see it happen to people every day, you should pull it out. Like you would too.
Oh, that's crazy.
Cigarettes and like I said, it helps with their stress. Take a few deep breaths. Inhale people in there. I'm sure it's you more than nicotine does on your body.
Well, any did good, I think, like that. I mean, I used to.
I've never smoked. I'm sure it helps people in some way.
I can see marijuana. You know.
Well, yeah.
I'm just saying.
No, that
makes
will
you
calm
stressed,
your
yeah,
nerves.
you know.
Do
that.
That'll probably just bone you out.
A little too calm.
Yeah, y'all should probably smoking cigarettes.
Right.
Smoke some weed.
What's wrong with you guys?
Something affects you.
I like that. Yeah, my neighbors smoking all the time.
Well, they never offer me any. I went for a run in my little neighborhood, and I went through like this little cul-de-sac area, and I kept smelling something weird, and I was like, is there like a skunk in my neighborhood? And then there was like someone sitting in a car, and all of a sudden that car like passed me like 3 or 4 times. What is this person doing? I was getting kind of freaked out, and then I like realized it was some kid like my age, probably younger, sitting in his car smoking weed, and I was like, oh my god. So like you're just trying to hide from your parents and get the smell out while you're driving by.
Alright, we're gonna go ahead and get started. So, on page 16 is where we're gonna start. Does anyone in here not know the flow through the heart? Or how in there, you know, Larry, you should forget that.
No. Miss Dr. Klein. But
So
he,
y'all had Dr. Klein, you know the flow
yeah,
through
he
the heart.
pushed it in our head.
Yeah.
Do you need me to go over the flow through the heart?
I think you already did.
Okay. Alright, well that's kind of where it starts on 16, that's what I wanted to make sure. But it says, talks about the arterial system first, because blood comes out of the heart and enters into the arterial side, okay? So the arterial system is a multi-branch elastic conduit. If you've ever hear the word conduit, that's kind of like, think of this as an artery, okay? It's a pathway through which blood goes, conduit is. It carries blood away from the heart and outward toward the most distant tissues. The arterial tree oscillates with every beat of the heart. It pumps out about 70 milliliters of blood into the aorta, causing a blood pressure pulse. And I'm sure y'all know this from Klein, but depending on how much blood your heart pumps out, kind of depends on your blood pressure, not speed state. If you have a little bit of blood coming out, you're going to have a lower blood pressure, okay? So it kind of correlates together. It says at the beginning of the cardiac contraction, the pressure in the left ventricle rises rapidly. It causes the aortic valve to open up and blood is ejected, okay, into the aorta. This is called stroke volume. The amount of blood ejected is called stroke volume. So do know that, because I know I tested you on that. Increased heart rate delivers an increased blood volume and supplies more nutrients. Conversely, the lower the heart rate, the smaller the blood that is pumped, okay? The patient's cardiac status plays an important role in the movement of blood throughout the vascular system. So we just talked about that. If the heart beats faster, okay, the more blood that's delivered. The heart beats slower, the less blood. So the patient's cardiac status plays an important role in the movement of blood. The heart pump generates the pressure. This is called the potential energy. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. So the heart, when it pumps, it causes blood to move. Okay, that's called potential energy, causing something to move. The stroke volume of blood produced by each heartbeat, remember stroke volume is the amount of blood that comes out of the heart, creates a pressure wave. Okay, so the heart contracting is the potential energy. It's causing it to move. All right. And then the blood is called the pressure wave. It keeps it moving. All right. Then it goes into, look on page 17. At the second bullet, it says, as the pressure wave moves from the large artery through the high-resistant vessels, remember arteries, they're high-resistant, they have higher pressure. Remember I was talking about that? They're going to go through the capillaries, and they get to the venous side. The pressure gradually declines. Okay, so remember day one we said arteries have high pressure, veins have low pressure, and you've got to have that difference so blood can go from one side to the next, and that's just reinforcing that. The pumping action of the heart maintains a high volume of blood in the arterial side, which sustains a high pressure gradient between arteries and veins. The pressure gradient is necessary to maintain flow. What are some reasons that the pressure on the veins may increase? And we talked about them. So think about it. If the pressure in the veins increase, that means the blood cannot move up correctly, so it causes your veins to dilate, which increases pressure. What are some reasons that a vein may dilate? DVT. Yes, y'all both said it. DVT and venous insufficiency. Exactly. So do know that. What are some reasons that can cause an increase in pressure in the veins? DVT and reflux. Okay? Because I've got it right here, so I'm sure I'll test you on that. So if you think about that, if the pressure increases on the venous side, remember if it gets to the arterial side or higher, there's no perfusion from one side to the next, right? If you don't have perfusion getting to the venous side, do you have any blood getting back to the heart? No, all right? So it's very important that we keep that pressure gradient. The right above energy, it says pressure is greatest at the heart and gradually declines as it moves distally. Again, the pressure difference or gradient is necessary to maintain flow. So, these things are very important. He mentions it 3 times on this page. All right, now it's going to go into energy. The movement of any fluid between 2 points has to have 2 things. First of all, you got to have a route, right? You got to have a route for it to go through. Second of all, again, you've got to have that pressure difference. So, in order for blood to move from one place to the next, it's got to have conduit, it's got to have something to go through, and it's got to have a pressure gradient difference. The greater the energy difference, the greater the flow. So it says the greater the energy difference, and in parentheses, the lower the resistance, the greater the flow. So that tells you right there that who has a bigger energy difference from the CCA? Does the ICA have a bigger difference or the ECA? ICA is low resistance, right? So the ICA has a bigger energy difference from the CCA. And then at the bottom, it says lower resistance has higher flow, we know about, greater energy difference. Higher resistance vessels have a lower flow rate. They have a lower energy difference. Now on page 16, there's 3 types of energy that are moved in order for blood to move from one point to another. And all I want you to know about these 3 types. The first one is called pressure energy. Pressure energy causes it to move. That's what I want you to know about. Okay? So pressure energy is used to cause the blood to move from one point to the next. So we said when the heart contracts, that's pressure energy, right? It's causing the blood to come out of the ventricle into the aorta. So pressure energy causes blood to move from one point to the next. Kinetic energy keeps it moving. Kinetic energy like gravity, something in motion, okay? So it keeps the blood moving. So what do you think we talked about that is a form of kinetic energy? Yes, we just talked about it, the difference in the pressure. Right, you've got to have that difference to keep blood moving, okay? So that's just a form of kinetic energy. It keeps it moving. And then the last one is gravitational energy. I remember we talked about hydrostatic pressure in here, right? All right, that's what that is. You're standing, your hydrostatic pressure is higher. The body works harder to get blood back to your heart. Keeps it moving. Oh, I said one form of kinetic is pressure gradient difference. Yeah, the difference in the pressures. So those are your three forms of energy. Pressure causes it to move. Kinetic keeps it moving. And then gravitational, we know blood's going to move slower when you're standing, faster when you're lying at the time. Okay? So all three of those factors are used in order for blood to be moved. What does sitting, if you're sitting still for a long period of time, what does that increase your chances of? Good. What if you're standing for a long period of time? Yes, the hydrostatic pressure gets affected, but if you're, okay, remember if you're standing still and you don't make your calf pump work, the blood just sits there, right? So what does that, it's like a blood. Yes, you're kind of there, you're there, but there's something that happens. The veins, the pressure in the veins is going to do what? Dilate. It does dilate. So what is that? Reflux. Okay. So sitting for a long period of time increases your risk for a blood clot. Standing increases your risk for reflux because the blood's just sitting there, so it's wearing on those valves. Okay. So eventually it will have wear and tear on them and cause reflux. But y'all are still on the right. You were there. Hydrostatic pressure, passing out. Y'all were all there. Good. Alright, on page 19, the second paragraph there, again, an energy gradient or pressure difference is necessary for blood to move from one point to another. In other words, movement will only occur from high pressure to low pressure, right? We just learned that. Inertia is the tendency of objects to maintain their status quo. So it helps to maintain flow. So what that means is your body will do its best to fix that pressure difference, okay? And then as blood moves farther out to the periphery, energy dissipates largely in the form of heat, but the pumping action of the heart continuously restores this heat. Alright, so that's how the heart works. There's your forms of energy, what causes blood to move. We know we need high pressure to low, so blood can pass from one side to the next. So if you are Dopplering an artery, you get what's called a spectral waveform, right? So at the bottom of 19, it goes over kind of a spectral waveform for you. During the acceleration phase of the pulse, early systole to peak, pressure is evenly distributed in all directions. The greatest amount of energy is produced at the peak systole. So remember, you measure that top peak. That's as fast as your blood's flowing, okay? So, so this is my waveform. This is early systole, right? Running up. Mark this one. Alright, so this is early systole. This would be your peak systole at the very top, okay? But the heart has contracted, pushes blood up out of it. It's contracting, it's fully contracted up here. So that's where it's the fastest out. Then, during the declaration phase, so when the heart starts to relax again, what happens to the blood? It says cardiac output decreases to the point at which the outflow through the high resistance vessels exceeds the volume. So when you're looking at it on here, when it starts to come down, this is when the heart is starting to relax again, right? Okay? So here, you know, it all comes down, usually it'll come below the baseline just a little bit. So this is when it's completely relaxed. Then what happens? It starts contracting again, and it makes your waveform. So that's what you're looking at when you're looking at a waveform. Early systole is contracting, peak is completely contracted, then it starts relaxing, completely relaxed, and then it starts contracting again. And sometimes it doesn't go below the baseline. But once it stops and starts back up again, that's when it has completely stopped, okay? Completely relaxed. So that's what that is. And then there's a picture for you here, which is much better than mine. I didn't know it was in here. On page 20, or we want to embarrass myself with that drawing. So there you go. Early systole, peak systole, there's diastole when the heart's relaxing. Right before it goes up again, that's when the heart's completely relaxed, okay? Then it starts contracting again, so you go back into early systole. Okay, we all okay up to that point? Good. Then on page 20, it goes into what's called laminar flow. Have we mentioned laminar flow before in here? I thought we did. Early on, I thought we talked about it. But laminar flow is a type of flow that's thought to exist in many vessels. So normal flow is called laminar flow. There's no turbulence, it's just normal. And this type of flow, blood moves in layers, and it's supposed to be fastest at the center and slowest at the wall. Okay, that's normal laminar flow. When you Doppler in here, where do I tell y'all to put your right in the middle, right? Why? Because it's fastest in the center. And something that I don't understand why he put it in this category, but there's two types of laminar flow. We just learned laminar flow is fastest in the center, slowest at the wall, right? Okay. Well, then the second paragraph, there's two forms of laminar flow. Parabolic is the shape of a bullet. Fastest in the center, slowest at the wall. That's what we just learned, okay? And then the other one's called flood flow. This is where they travel at the same velocity. It don't matter if you're Doppling at the wall or at the center. They're all going to be the same speed. But he still considers that to be laminar flow, even though we just learned laminar flow is fastest at the center. So, anyways, he categorizes them together. The two types of laminar flow, parabolic, that's one that's shaped like a bullet. Again, fastest in the center. Then plug flow is fastest no matter if you're at the wall or the center. Are you ever at the tech going to have to tell them plug or parabolic? No. But if you want to see what type of flow you have, go in there and Doppler. If it's fastest in the center, you have parabolic. If it's the same speed at the wall and the center, you have plug flow. So you can test yourself if you would like. All right, the movement of blood through an artery depends on both the physical properties of the fluid and the interaction between the artery and the fluid. The longer the artery, the longer the fluid is in contact with the artery, and the higher the pressure required to maintain flow. So some things that can affect how fast your blood moves is, of course, viscosity. That's the thickness of blood, hematocrit, right? So an increased viscosity, that means an increased thickness, is going to make your blood travel slower. So that's going to be a decreased velocity. So think about syrup. It's really thick. It pours out slower, right? Has an increased viscosity, so it pours out slower, which means it has a decreased velocity. Velocity is speed. And then a decreased viscosity would be like water, okay? Really thin, pours out really quick. So it's faster. Decreased viscosity, faster velocity. Y'all got that? What viscosity is and how it works with the speed of flow, how fast it can move. Thicker it is, the slower it moves. All right, then on page 21, it says, in the circulatory system, energy is lost in the form of heat as the layers of red blood cells rub against each other. This is friction. Friction is generated by properties of the fluid. The thicker the fluid, the greater the attraction and more energy required to move the fluid. So the thicker it is, the more friction it has in it, okay? Energy loss during blood flow occurs because of friction. Examples of high viscosity are an elevated hematocrit, which we just mentioned, and low viscosity would be like anemia. Their blood's thin, okay? Low hematocrit or anemia. They have thin or low amounts of blood. Although viscosity and the length of a vessel affect the resistance, all right? So the thicker it is, the more resistance, right? Because of the more friction, so the slower it flows. The longer the vessel, the more resistance, okay? So remember that. The thicker it is, the more resistance. The longer it is, the more resistance. So it says, although both of these affect resistance, a change in the diameter of the vessel affects resistance more. Okay? So, thicker it is, higher resistance. The longer the artery, the higher resistance. The more that's needed to move that blood through. And we talked about this right here, like the very first day. Okay? So be sure you remember pressure and flow and velocity and resistance. And how it works going through a stenosis. Alright, so my first little drawing is a vessel that has no plaque. If you have no plaque, you have no resistance, right? So your resistance and your velocities are going to be low. You have a good flow rate and your pressure is high, right? So there's no stenosis, nothing to limit the amount of pressure you have and the amount of flow you have. So then when you get into a stenosis, remember proximal to a stenosis, your pressure and flow are good and your velocity and your resistance are down, okay? Because it hasn't hit that stenosis yet. Well, I'd rather go the same direction. When you get inside of a stenosis, pressure and flow go down. So what's going to go up? Velocity and resistance. Remember, they're inversely related to each other, right? Because when you hit this stenosis, it causes up resistance, right? It increases your resistance. It increases your resistance. It increases your velocity. And what happens inside the stenosis? You have higher velocity, correct? All right, now once you get past the stenosis, remember you get this turbulent eddy flow here, and then on past that, pressure and flow go back to normal, velocity and resistance go back down, okay? So this is how it works going through a stenosis. So it said that the thickness of the blood affects your resistance, and the length of the vessel affects your resistance, but the most important factor that affects your resistance is the radius. How big is that vessel? My radius is smaller here than it is here. So it's, of course, going to cause my velocity and my resistance to go up. And that's on 22, that's what P's law talks about. I don't never say his name right, so I'll call him P's law. He talks about the relationship between flow, pressure, and resistance. The one he leaves out is velocity, okay? So P talks about flow, pressure, and resistance. And if you know this right here, you know how they work together. Pressure and flow go up, velocity goes down, right? If velocity goes up, pressure and flow go down. So that's why it's important to know how those are related. And that's exactly what he talks about. So I'm not going to go over that.
Do we need to memorize the formulas on 21 or 22?
I don't know.
Okay.
No. Alright, so you can look at the drawings on 22 and 23, and it just shows as they go through a stenosis what happens to their velocity, especially on 23, image A. So the diameter gets smaller when they go through it. So what goes up? Velocity and resistance. What goes down? Pressure and flow. There you go. Okay. Turn on over to 24. This is the Reynolds number. And he wanted to figure out how fast does blood have to be moving for it to become turbulent. Okay? So the second paragraph, Osborne Reynolds sought to determine how the viscosity, the thickness, the size of the vessel, and the pressure-volume relationship influence the stability of flow. Flow volume increases as pressure increases, right? We know that from that. But only to a point. As flow changes from stable to disturbed, Reynolds found that the increase in pressure no longer increased flow volume. Instead, it increased flow disturbances called eddy currents. Because when you come right out of this stenosis, your pressure goes back up, okay? But it's saying directly after a stenosis, even though pressure goes up, flow doesn't go up yet, okay? And it causes eddy current. Once you get past the eddy current, then you go back to pressure and flow goes up, velocity and resistance go down. So directly after a stenosis, only in the eddy current is caused because of the increase in pressure. When we talk about how a water hose, if you close it on the end and you let go, it just explodes. That's what eddy currents are, okay? It's going through the blockage and it opens up and blood just explodes everywhere. So that's what he means right there. The last paragraph on that page, halfway down, it says when the Reynolds number exceeds 2,000, laminar flow becomes disturbed. Now, we'll tell you some books say 2,500. So I hope on your registry, both options are not there. Take your best guess. But on here, it does say 2,000. Okay, so we understand P log, we understand this. And then Reynolds numbers, we understand how directly after a stenosis, you get eddy current because of the increase in pressure, but you don't have an increase in flow yet. You got to get past this eddy current, then your flow catches up with your pressure. Okay, so that's what, and once it exceeds 2,000, it becomes this disturbed eddy flow. All right, then the very last thing is Bernoulli's principle. And he just done an equation on velocity and pressure. And if you look up here, velocity and pressure are inversely related. So when velocity goes up, pressure goes down. Where there is high velocity, there's low pressure. Where there's low velocity, there's high pressure. Okay? So they're inversely related. That's all you need to know. Again, if you understand this, you'll be fine on a test in here. We're getting harder than I thought it would. Let's see. At the bottom of 25, it says pressure gradient. Again, the difference in pressure between 2 points are described as flow separation. What type of flow does the bulb have? Red and blue. Why? Because it's separating to the E and the I. Okay, that's why it's red and blue. So it says flow separations within a vessel may be caused by changes in the vessel or because of the direction of the vessel. If you have a turbulent vessel, especially like on this image B, if this is the ICA, it goes straight across and it dives down. So straight across would be your normal red. When it dives down, it probably turns blue, okay, because it's changing in the direction of the blood. So that could be a reason for flow separation. The size of the vessel. You probably noticed in long that even the bulb in long is red and blue, okay, just like in this figure 213. So you've got red flow, then you've got blue flow, okay, that's the flow separation area. So again, flow separation can be seen at a bifurcation because of the size of the vessel changes or the direction of the vessel. One of the two. Anything else on that one? Tell y'all. No. All right, page 27. Steady flow. Steady flow is the result of a steady driving pressure. So the ICA is steady flow. It doesn't have those high peaks. It's kind of just a steady flow, okay? Pulsatile flow is just definite. Y'all know what pulsatile means, right? ECA, pulsatile flow. Okay? At the bottom, again on page 27, it goes over A, B, C, D, and E. So A is when the heart is contracting, what we talked about. B, it should be completely contracted. C, it starts relaxing. D, still relaxing, and then this kind of carries on above the baseline. But E would represent a totally relaxed heart. Okay? There's just another thing when you're looking at a waveform, what are you looking at? Okay. One thing I have wrote here, and I can't remember if it's for y'all or if you get to vascular too, but during early diastole, arterial flow turns blue for a second. Okay? So just write that in your notes because I'd hate to test you on it and not have a note there. That during early diastole, that arterial flow turns blue, and that's normal. Yes. During early diastole, arterial flow will turn blue, and that's normal. There. Peripheral resistance on page 28. Low resistance vessels are continuous flow, which we just talked about, such as an ICA. They feed a dilated vascular bed because they they need more blood flow going to them. Then it goes over some low resistance, ICA, vertebrals, renal, celiac, splenic, and hepatic. Those are all low resistant vessels, okay? Flow is continuously going to them. High resistance are your pulsatile. And then on page 29, it says the aorta, ECA, subclavian, iliac, fasting SMA, which we talked about a minute ago. Those are all high resistant vessels. The next paragraph, the characteristic reversal of flow in a biphasic or triphasic waveform disappears distal to a stenosis for a number of reasons. I feel like we've talked about this before, but when you're looking at an artery, remember I told you I think I told you this, if you lose your diastolic component, you're supposed to look distal. Have we went over that yet?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we have, okay. And if you, yeah, we have, because if the flow is low amplitude around it, you look proximal, okay. You know that with an artery. If you lose your diastolic flow, the disease is distal. And if the flow becomes low amplitude around it, the disease is proximal. We're just going to finish on this page, and then we'll be done for today. I think that's it. That's all I have written down on this page. And then we'll start. We just have a few pages to cover next week, and we'll start on those.
So that's it?
For artery. If you lose your diastolic flow in an artery, you look distal. And then if an arterial waveform becomes low amplitude around it, you look proximal.